Kia ora and welcome to the Riftbound series aimed at teaching you how to play Riftbound step by step, getting you ready for your first Nexus night. Today is video 5 and we're going to be reviewing something a little different. We are not going to be doing a gameplay commentary, but instead we are going to, if I bring us over to, reviewing the bans and erratas for 17th of July 2026. Without further ado, we are first going to be beginning with the question of what constitutes a ban-worthy card. Now, a ban-worthy card is a card that fits within the 3 criteria Riftbound themselves set out before making these decisions. They do not do it lightly. In the history of the game, we are now almost a year in, we've only had 11 cards banned, and I will be explaining what goes into this process the best we understand, because we are not feet on the ground with these developers. I am not, at least. But I'll also be going over the 2 categories which we can usually sort these cards into. Now, the first criteria is this card overrepresented in an unhealthy way? The second criteria is, are the problems with this card likely to get better or worse over time? And the third criteria is, does this card promote unhealthy play patterns? Now, we're going to be going over each of these questions, these criteria, one after the other, talking about them in more detail to hopefully get you more understanding of what each of these means. But we'll begin with criteria 1. Is this card overrepresented in an unhealthy way? What you can see here are 3 currently banned cards from the Spiritforge ban saga: the Reaver's Row, an Origins card; Obelisk of Power, another Origins card; and Cold Shot, a Spiritforge card that, unlike Reaver's Row and Obelisk, only saw about, I believe, a month worth of play. But to give you a good idea of why these were banned, we can see Reaver's Row was allowing an interaction which really hindered a crucial part of the game, which was combat. It was the battlefield that says when you defend here, you may move a friendly unit from here to base. And if you only had 1 unit at that battlefield, you could conquer and you could move in without any concern about what the opponent has on the other side of the board. This was crucial when it came to early game development, because it essentially meant that you could move a unit in with very little risk of not having it there next turn, either as an attacker or defender. Moving on to Obelisk of Power, at the Pittsburgh Regional, it had a 71.75% inclusion rate across the board on every deck. It was the top 5 most represented card, behind the leaders of the performance, which was Draven, and some crucial cards inside the meta at the time. Now, this last one, as I said, it got very small portions of play. It was included, however, in 50% of the decks participating in the Bologna Regional Qualifier. The reason that I have mentioned Call Shot is because if we now go on to question 2, are the problems with this card likely to get better or worse? It is going to answer these questions for us. Now, if we go back to Reaver's Row, the problem was the Origins cards, Reaver's Row and Obelisk, I'll cover them at the same time actually, they had already been in the game, and whether or not they decided to preemptively hold off on banning them until the Spiritforge season so they could do a bit more of a mass ban, or they decided that they weren't too bad until they got into Spiritforge, it's unknown. But these 2 cards represented a continuing play cycle that did not wean out of the early game Spiritforge meta, and actually continued to grow as what is known as Miracle Draven or Miracle decks became more popular. We go on to Cold Shot. As I said, it was early days and it was seeing some incredibly high play, and it was creating what is known as solitaire decks, or decks that you can't really interact with as the opponent, and was giving such a gradient of opportunity for the player using those cards. In some mirrors, it was purely who gets the more Cold Shots and who gets fizzes in order to replay those cards. Now, if we move on to criteria 3 of, does this card promote unhealthy play patterns? I've already really covered it in the first 2 points, but it was introducing some concepts that not everyone would agree is unhealthy for the game at the time, but it was introducing this focus, especially with Obelisk, of, oh, if I go first or second, I can guarantee my turn 1 isn't going to be a 2 or 3 rune play, it's going to be a 3 or a 4 rune play. And when you match certain 4 rune cards against what usually people would have as a turn 1 play, which is a 2 energy card, it was massively unbalanced in the power dynamic that was going on. So that's why I mentioned they might have actually banned it earlier, but they chose to hold off because obviously in the English format, we had a very short window in comparison to the Chinese format with these cards, and they didn't want to slap ban after ban after ban, really messing with people's expectations of their ability to play the game and play the cards they want to play. Now, I want to take a moment to quickly focus on Called Shot, because I've talked about a few things regarding it, but I think that I need to go into a bit more detail just so that everyone understands kind of the potency of it. And I want to bring into perspective these 2 cards. Israel Prodigy. When you play me, discard 1 and draw 2. That is powerful, but not game-breaking. The other part is optional additional costs you pay cost 1 energy or 1 power less. If we look back up to Called Shot, its power cost is 1 purple. Its repeat cost is 1 purple. No energy. So Israel is essentially making that a 1 purple, look at the top 4 cards of your main deck, draw 2, recycle the others. And if we look at the other side of the screen, we can see Seal of Discord, which is a seal that allows you to tap it to create a specific color of power. There is one for every color in the game. They're all called different things, but the Seal of Discord is what we're really wanting to focus on here. And the way the game really worked was turn 1. Either you go first or second, you play a unit, doesn't really matter. Turn 2, you bring out your Israel. And if you have a seal in hand, you use that seal in order to pay that 1 power, and now you have a seal and an Israel. You throw away a card, and you draw 2 more. And then turn 3, you play your Called Shot for free. You have to recycle no runes, which means that your tempo is no longer devastated by the impact of Called Shot, and you can repeat it for free. And because Israel was not an exhaust optional add-on, it was always there, you could play all of your Called Shots on 1 turn if you got them all, and it meant it was so powerful that they had to take an action. And when you look at these 3 cards, they had to ask themselves, what here is fitting our criteria and what isn't? Now, I very quickly want to take us over to the game I have going on at the moment between a Draven with a banned deck versus a current Wuju Master Yi. These 2 decks would have never mirrored because this is Unleashed and this is a Spirit Forge. And what I have currently is I have an Israel I played, I believe it was on turn 2. No, I played an Overzealous Fan on turn 2 for one of the players, and then Israel came out on turn 3? Oh no, it was actually, there you go. It was turn 1 I brought this Israel out because we went second, and our turn 1 was playing out an Israel and discarding what is known as Scrap Heap. Now, Scrap Heap was another banned card that says when this is played, discarded, or killed, draw a card. And so when you mirror this with Israel's, when you play me discard 1 and you discard Scrap Heap, you are now drawing 3. And it was so potent, they also had to consider what really were the impacts of that card, and they went, Scrap Heap is very niche, it likes to do certain things, and it interacts with a plethora of cards. There's another card it interacted with called Detonate, which allowed you to kill a gear to draw 2, kill a gear and the controller draws 2, I should say. It was like a Hidden Blade for gear, and it was a red card. And that also created the same situation where you can kill this and draw 3. Now, it is the Draven's turn. He has 2 runes up, and he has Israel. He has 2 Called Shots in hand, a Fight or Flight, a 3rd banned card. So on this one screen, actually, we have all 4 banned cards. We have the Called Shot we've been talking about. We have the Scrap Heap that I've been discussing just now. We have the Fight or Flight, which is a spell that is an action speed that says move a unit from a battlefield to its base. And the last one is the Draven Vanquisher. Now, Draven Vanquisher is a unit. It is the now the 2nd unit, first ever unit banned, but it is the 2nd unit to ever be banned in the OPL format. and it has the words, when I win a combat, play a gold gear token exhausted. And when I attack or defend, you may pay 1 red rune, or recycle 1 red rune. If you do, give me +2 this turn. Now, Draven Vanquisher has actually had an errata as of the yesterday's July 17th bans and erratas. He actually got an errata, but didn't get banned. And this actually plays into a larger picture, which is, while they say they've banned these cards, it's not permanent. These cards will not always be banned. They may come back into play when the format is in a healthier state for these cards to not be as oppressive, you may say. But without further ado, we'll begin the Draven's rest of turn. All they did this turn is, I believe they just played this... Yeah, they played the Israel Prodigy from hand and discarded the Scrap Heap and actually drew these 3 cards. They are now going to tap the Seal of Discord to create 1 purple power, and they're going to play the Called Shot. They are going to elect to play on repeat and use the Israel to reduce its cost by 1 power. And now they will be looking at the top 2 cards of their main deck, and they get to choose one, and we're going to put Rasa to hand, and we're going to recycle the other one. Then we're going to look at the next 2 cards, and we're going to decide we want to put the Hard Bargain into hand and recycle the other one. That resolves that one. Amazing. We now do it again. For free. Look at the first 2 cards. Oh, a Battering Ram. We like that. We're going to put that to our hand. Seal of Discord's great, but we've already got 2. This deck really only liked 2. Unless you had 3, then why not? We found another Israel Prodigy. Do we want another Israel Prodigy? Maybe, but because they can stack, it's powerful, but we don't have many repeat costs that are additional, but we'll put it to hand anyway because it is nice for the draw capability, and that will resolve. With our last 2 runes, we are not going to do anything, we're going to pass. It now becomes the Master Yi's turn. Now Master Yi is going to begin by getting some experience for the holds. We still need to play the game through. He gets 3 experience, meaning all his units now get +1. I'm not going to do the whole shebang for the purposes of the video, but I thought I'd just still add in the details that are necessary. We're going to play a Zhonya's Dais. Zhonya's just allows us to, when the next unit would die, recall it instead and kill the Zhonyas. And we're going to see the Voracious Grump move into this battlefield. Now, the move trigger has occurred. It is now a showdown, and the Draven player is defending and can trigger his Overzealous Fan, which says, when I defend, you may kill me to move an attacking unit to its base. The Overzealous Fan will die, and the Voracious Grump will move back to base. Unless the Master Yi, because the showdown is technically still occurring, a combat showdown is still technically occurring, unless the Master Yi has a way to move into this battlefield right now, a showdown will resolve with the Draven winning combat. And that's what's going to happen. The Draven just won a combat and gets to make a gold. And because of Draven's legend ability, he draws one. If we were afraid of another unit coming out, we could have even recycled 1 red rune to give this +2 that lingers until the end of the turn, which means we can stack that +2. If we were worried about keeping the Overzealous Fan, we could have actually even played a Fight or Flight to push that unit away, but why not? Let's just do that instead. It is now the Master Yi's turn continued. They are going to 5, bring out another Voracious Grump, and they're just going to pass. That's all they can do. It is now the Draven's turn. They hold to 2 points. The Master Yi should have hold to 3, sorry. And it is the Draven's turn. They're going to go, you know, I like this battlefield. What can I do about that? Well, let's tap these 2 and a seal and ride the wind over, readying the Draven. And let's resolve that. It is now a showdown. There are no attack or defend triggers on the Master Yi side. This Master Yi gives +2 or +1 might when they're above 6 experience, and you can see here they are. But the Draven is attacking, so they're going to recycle 1 in order to give themselves +2 might. They have priority, so they're going to tap 2 in order to play Fight or Flight, and they're going to target the Master Yi Tempered. The Master Yi is going to respond by tapping 1, recycling 1, and playing a Defy. The Draven is going to tap 2 to play a Hard Bargain, meaning that the spell is countered unless the controller pays 2 energy. the Master Yi has none, so the Defy will fizzle, the Fight or Flight will resolve with the Master Yi going back to base. Now, the Draven is going to pass priority over to the Master Yi is tapped out, so they're going to move back, they lose the Zhonyas, but the unit doesn't die, but under the previous rules, technically, they won the combat here, so they make another gold. And they draw another card. And they're going to end their turn by playing out this stacked deck. So they look at the top 3 cards of their deck, they see another Rasa, they're going to go, that's pretty good, but we're going to put the scrap heap to hand, because we have an Ezreal. This will resolve, we'll have played 1, 2, 3, 4 cards this turn, but unfortunately because Battering Ram has a minimum of 1 energy, it's a red card that says I cost 1 less for each card you've played this turn, to a minimum of 1, it does technically still cost 1, you can't ignore that cost. They are now going to pass the turn, and all of a sudden, Draven has been able to kick off both battlefields, push all these units back to base. Yes, they may lose this Draven, but is it really the end of the world for them? Because they have an Ezreal here. They're about to have at least 10 cards in their trash, which means these 2 Rasas are going to cost 1 purple energy. And what do we know about Draven right now with purple energy? It's a free resource. We ever worry about not having that Draven back? When I conquer or hold, you may play a unit from your trash if you have Last Rites attached. You attach Last Rites to a Rasa, it's a 9 might unit. It is very difficult for a lot of decks to get over 9 might easily. And especially when a deck such as Draven's always is going to have hard bargains, Fight or Flights, and Rivalents. And so these things combined are why the combination that you're seeing here of the Echo, the Ezreal, and the Seal of Discord had to get banned. One of those had to be removed. Seal of Discord by itself is not overpowered. Ezreal Prodigy without Cold Shot and Scrap Heap is not overpowered. Cold Shot without Ezreal Prodigy is still very strong because it's still a potential free draw and what we know as predict or vision. It is for these reasons that these cards had to really get pushed into the wayside. But let's have a look at the previous ban list in a bit more of a broad sense. We've obviously seen these 4 cards here, and we talk about Obelisk of Power and Griever's Row. The last one we haven't seen is the Dreaming Tree. Now, the Dreaming Tree is a battlefield that says the first time you choose a friendly unit with a spell here, each turn, draw 1. Now, it didn't matter if it was your opponent's turn or your turn. Each turn, you could choose a friendly unit with a spell, you drew 1. Now, notice that it says choose and not play, and that is because even if the spell got countered, if it was a card that required you to choose a person, you drew. Then and there. So you could not defy that ability. The reason this got banned, it was a bit of a bigger picture when it came to Aurelia. It was what is I'm going to call a Category 2 ban, where it was banned in order to stem or reduce the potency of a current performance. Now, let's look at the updated list. These are the 3 new additions to the ban list. Stealthy Pursuer, which I'm going to talk about very quickly. Arena's Greatest and Aspirant's Climb. Now, these are 2 battlefields that do the exact same thing in different ways. Arena's Greatest gives you a point at the start of your turn, on the very, very first turn, and Aspirant's Climb requires the number of points for the game to be increased by 1. 1 speeds up the game, 1 slows down the game. And if we think about what the purpose and the interest of Riftbound is, where you want there to be exciting games that have potential and it isn't decided on the draw, without a bit of luck I should say, but decide on the battlefield draw, what they actually saw was these 2 battlefields saw such an astronomical high amount of play that at some times you were playing those battlefields to counter the other battlefield. If you felt that you were seeing a high value amount of the Arena's Greatest, you would bring Aspirant's Climb with you in the hopes of countering it so that at least the game was the same speed, and vice versa. These 2 battlefields, I'm a big fan of Aspirant's Climb. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it really threw the game into an interesting curveball. It still had a huge amount of impact in the way the game was played, and they saw that as unhealthy. because we are now going to wait and see what the repercussions are of these two bans and these battlefields, I can't really say why per se, besides, based on the three criteria, it seems that they were unhealthy for the game. Now, Stealthy Pursuer, I want to take a quick moment to actually review a different why this card was banned, and I will do so by bringing us to this. Now, if I play that from the beginning, this is your battlefield. Aspirant's Climb. I know, timing. You have a Renata Glassed Industrialist in your base. She has the ability that says your tokens enter ready. Now remember, tokens are gold and recruits and sprites and mechs. Anything that has the token tag next to or above its name. You have in base a Stealthy Pursuer. It is ready. You have an Eye of Herald. You pay 1 yellow rune to attach the Eye of Herald. Eye of Herald has the ability that says when I move, play a 1 might recruit unit token here. Here being where it moves to. Stealthy Pursuer has the ability that says when a friendly unit moves from my location, I may be moved with it. The Stealthy Pursuer now moves into Aspirant's Climb. They have moved and are now exhausted, but on play, they make a recruit token at the battlefield. It comes in exhausted, however, because of Renata Glask, it enters ready. And you know what? It doesn't want to stay there. It moves out of that battlefield. Now Stealthy Pursuer triggers and says, I want to move with you. But they have just triggered a move ability. The recruit now exhausts, but Eye of Herald triggers, making a recruit that enters ready. And vice versa, they just bounce back and forth. And you can see now you can make an infinite number of recruit tokens at both battlefields. And they realize that this in particular, a 3-card infinite, was unhealthy. They banned Stealthy Pursuer well before these other cards. They announced it as a, hey, we're banning this. I want you to know, don't Fairycraft. Don't even consider it, we're banning it. They were that onto it regarding this infinite. Now they have said they do not consider infinites to be unhealthy. The Lux infinite, the Jin infinite, are two to be kind of the only two that can really do it because they're both blue. Those kind of infinites, they look at and go, that is a healthy part of the game because they are choosing to play the game in a way that interests them, but is still not indefeatable. With this, if you get the right opening hand, you have won the game on turn 3. Because this is a 4-cost, sure. This is a 4-cost, sure. They both recycle power, which means on turn 2, if you go first, you will recycle 1 rune. The Eye of Herald costs 1 energy. If we go back, you can see that it is a 1 energy. So that means turn 1, you put down the Eye of Herald. Turn 2, you play your Stealthy Pursuer. Turn 3, you play your Renata Glask. Your Renata Glask can be exhausted. You now have a readied Stealthy Pursuer. It moves, and you have now made an infinite on turn 3. They looked at it and went, that's pretty bad. Let's not do that. No, we're going to hit. Now, let us move back over to the ban list, and I want to talk about those 2 categories that I brought up. We have category 1 and 2 bans. This is not a common thing, it's more just a way to describe the ban process. Now, if we look at category 1 bans, they are bans that aim to prevent the potency of a playstyle or archetype. In this circumstance, they did not enjoy the lack of combat that was occurring in combat, and they had 2 real strong avenues. Rename the way to do combat and adjust the format in which combat is performed, or ban a few cards and keep combat the same. Fun fact, by the way, they ended up having to readjust combat regardless, but these cards still made the game a little too unhealthy, so they kept them banned. The other category of bans are category 2 bans, bans that aim to reduce the potency of a playstyle or archetype. You'll notice that I put Stealthy Pursuer here, and that is because it does not by itself create an environment in which the game becomes uninhabitable. With the same process of actions, you will never get an infinite without Stealthy Pursuer, but they had been in the game long enough that people should have been able to figure something out, but they didn't. It could technically be a Category 1 ban because it aims to prevent the potency of a playstyle archetype, but as an infinite, it is not trying to prevent infinites in the same way that Fight or Flight was preventing combat, or Cold Shot was influencing the potency of the ability for a person to get through their entire deck. The other two cards, Dreaming Tree and Aspirant's Climb, they both aim to reduce the potency of a playstyle. Dreaming Tree aimed to reduce the potency of decks that really... green decks, essentially, is a really easy way to say it. They chose to ban or reduce the potency of a green deck by banning Dreaming Tree. And Aspirant's Climb is more of a across the board, much like Arena's Greatest. You can probably put a few of these in either category, but these are just a few examples. Now, let's talk quickly about community pressure versus consistency. This is because leading up to the known ban incoming, the community brought up these two cards. Fizz Trickster, which has the ability, when you play me, you may play a spell from your trash with an energy cost of no more than 3, ignoring its energy cost, recycle the spell after you play it. This card did in fact actually get an Errata, which is good, because it says that you have to recycle after you play it. It has been changed to recycle that card after it resolves, or regardless. I forget the exact words, but essentially means, hey, even if it is defied, you still have to recycle it. And the other one is Dazzling Aurora, which I have done a video on. Sivir Aurora versus Diana. It does aim to show the potency and the overarching power that Dazzling Aurora can bring to the game. But once again, criteria is key. Not liking a card does not make it ban-worthy. And this is where I must commend Riot Games and their ability to not fold under the pressure of people saying Fizz is absolutely the worst card in the game at the moment, bar Echo. We need to get rid of it. No one really expected a ban of Aspirant's Climb or the Arena's Greatest. Some people had inklings, but for the most part, it was one of those bans that really took a lot of people from left wing. Now, the other part of it is... give me one moment. Here we go. Is that these bans were not pressured by the community because they also are not unhealthy to the game. While, yes, many people would agree that Dazzling Aurora creates scenarios in which the game is not enjoyable to play against, it is not unhealthy in the same way that it is. Its continued existence is going to make the game a complete terrible experience for everyone involved, because there are still ways to counter Dazzling Aurora. In fact, it is getting more easy to counter Dazzling Aurora. There are some cards coming out that are worth looking at if you do hate Dazzling Aurora. When it comes to Fizz Trickster, yes, the ability for you to play a card from your trash is annoying. However, with the advent of Banish as a more relevant focus for a lot of the new Vendetta cards, it is not to say that that is going to continue. They may have to revisit it after the Vendetta meta has settled, and if Fizz continues to be completely making people break down and cry. But at the moment, we're not seeing this as an issue. So for us at the moment, these two cards, while the community may have a lot of pressure to get them banned, the criteria is key. Now let's move on to erratas and why cards need updates. This one is pretty easy to answer, and it's erratas are required when the card does not perform as intended. And that sounds a bit wishy-washy, but what I mean by this is these two cards are the crux of an errata. Diana Lunari says, when a showdown begins here, you may pay 1 energy. If you do, predict. Then reveal the top card of your main deck. If it's a spell, draw it. Emperor's Dais says, when you conquer here, you may pay 1 energy and return a unit you control here to its owner's hands. If you do, play a 2 Might Sand Soldier unit token here. These two are perfect examples of how a card should read, but they've done it wrong. The focus of a card in its ability should say what is the trigger that occurs in these cases when a showdown begins here. That tells you when does this trigger. Same with Emperor's Dais, when you conquer here, that is when it triggers. What is the cost? You may pay 1. It is not you can, so you get to choose. You get to elect into it, which also means you must announce that you are paying the 1 energy. Emperor's Dais requires you pay 1 energy and return a unit you control here to its owner's hand. And then what is the result of you electing to perform the action? If you do, predict, then reveal the top card of your main deck. If you do, play a 2 Might Sand Soldier unit token here. The way that these cards were actually being played, it's a bit different. If we specifically look at Emperor Diana Lunari, and we focus on, in particular, this, comma, the card actually has 2 abilities. And the way that it is interpreted by community, and I can see it because I've had to stare at it for a long time, but I can understand if it's immediately going, that doesn't seem right. It is because you pay the 1 energy, and if you do, you predict. And then people interpreted, and it was accepted that based on the wording of the way the cards are meant to read, the comma ends the paid ability. It then says, then reveal the top card of your main deck if it's a spell drawn. So what would happen is you would pay the 1 energy to predict, rather than pay the 1 energy to predict and then draw. And so if we look at Emperor's Dais, it has the same issue of you may pay 1 energy and return a unit you control here to its hand. And so what people were doing is they were returning a unit to their hand, but not paying the 1 energy. So they were not completing the payment requirements for the Sand Soldier. What they did is they went, this is unhealthy. Let us review these cards and look at how they're structured and go, how do we change this? And the quick answer to that is, when a showdown begins here, you may pay 1 energy to predict, then reveal the top card of your main hand. When you conquer here, you may pay 1 energy and return a unit you control to its owner's hands to play as 2 Might Sand Soldier. What they did is they used the word to instead of if you do, in order to ensure that the community and the card more clearly explained that you must do all that is before the 2 to do everything that is after the 2. While it may seem, once again, very counterintuitive, it might seem that this is, by all means, a pretty easy to understand situation, the community itself reads cards very finely, and they are trying to look for reasons to get more value. And so erratas come across the board in many ways. It's to clarify certain issues, but also to ensure that the cards are being played the way they're meant to be played. This by no means means that every card is going to ever be perfect. There are many Origins cards that get erratas that I forget about. Everyone forgets about. But with enough play, you kind of remind yourself, no, that is how it's meant to be played. And that is the crux of it. You look at what the card says and you look to the spirit. People hated the way that they used these 2 cards because they saw what was actually meant to be happening, but they had to agree that it did not go against the rules of the game. This also really upsets a lot of people because obviously when you errata a card, this card will not get immediately errata to the second that League of Legends or Riot Games decides, no, that's wrong. It is going to remain that text, and they're going to print new ones. And now you have 2 different prints of the same card. And if you're not up to date with the erratas, well, tough luck, you have to know, and you have to take someone's word by it. And you have to now look online for the correct words, and not scribble it on there, because now you've marked the card. So, there's a lot of things that go into the teething issues of a game such as this, where the wording matters so much. It will never be perfect, but they will try their best. But I hope this video has helped you in understanding the new bans and some of the reasons that go into a ban, as well as the erratas and why it's important to really read the cards to know the cards, but also why that rule does not work, and reading the card doesn't always explain the card. Anyway, thank you for today, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.